Hey, Tristan here. I wanted to share a few thoughts about motives and how we parent. For all of us, we'll probably know from our childhood that we remember so much more the message that was conveyed than the facts of what took place in our early childhood experiences. And I think the message that's conveyed is, at least the part that we can control, is largely influenced by our motive, by what's really fueling our decisions. And I wanted to sort of lay out a framework which I think helps me to unpack to what are my motives. So I'll first qualify that my personality is a freedom-loving type. I'm very much more naturally on the capitalistic side of things compared to a more, authoritarian or socialistic side of things. In other words, I like to create incentives to do the right thing and not be too heavy-handed on forcing things, rather than dictating what needs to happen in a very specific way and hoping for the best outcome. I've got my own reasons for doing that. Largely, I think it's just my personality bias. I don't like being told what to do. I like the concept of empowering someone to make great decisions, and I love to see the potential in someone. I'm also less inclined to worry about the downside and to be concerned over things falling apart. And I think I've got a fair confidence that we can pick us up and dust us off, not just me, but my children as well. So all of that biases why I prefer, more laissez-faire or incentive-oriented approach. But there's a dark side to my laissez-faire approach. It's easy for me to pull back and let things happen without being so involved. When my wife is stepping in and disciplining in her style, which I don't always agree with or doesn't feel natural to me all the time, I can easily step back and go, look, if it will work, it will work. If it won't, and she'll learn. What I don't always do is get involved and help out. If I don't agree with the underlying approach she's taking, I'm more inclined to disengage, to not care, to perhaps carelessly let it run its course, thinking that whatever is going to work will stick around, and if it doesn't, she'll learn. But that's not always best. It's not best for my daughter, and it's not always best for her. Sometimes she doesn't find the right way. Now, sometimes it works really well, and my little quiet analytical self is like, oh, I should take note of that. But generally, I think that type of passiveness sends a message of, I'm not helping you. You're not worth it to me. I don't value your approach. And that's not my intent. Obviously, I don't like the approach, but it's not that I don't value her or her approach, but that is the message I convey. And that's one of the dangerous parts of passive or complacent approaches to things, is that they can convey messages that we didn't intend, and they're not rooted in nothing. I definitely did have an essence of carelessness, probably mixed of fear, frustration, various complicated motives I had, which led to my wife feeling unsupported. Obviously, there's the other side of the spectrum for those who are not so laissez-faire, who like to be authoritarian, who like to demand that certain things are done in a certain way. And there's a lot of benefit, especially for a child, to put stronger expectations on them and to be more clear and directive of how they should act, as long as you're being directive and responsive. So this is the crux. So if you're an authoritarian style parent, naturally speaking, and you're not reading the way your child emotionally responds to your directives, if you're not tailoring your approach, your terminology, the volume, the level that you stand at in order to be most acceptable to them, and also tailoring the type of direction you give to accommodate their personality, their preferences. You're going to wear this because I want you to wear this. They don't want to wear that. And they're a little human, and they have the ability to choose, and they have preferences. And perhaps there's another dress that is not your number one, but you'd be happy with it, and they'd be happy with as well. That's why we need to be responsive to what they might desire and include minimal options. We give them clear boundaries of where not to go and where to be directing, but we also want to give some options. And this is where I think the issue can be for our authoritarian decisions, is that sometimes we're not really looking for the best for them. We want what we want, and we're being directive, not for their sake. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to be directive towards any human being, whether they're an adult or a child, because what you're saying is, I know, I'm right, this is best. Who says so? Me. I am God. And you would never want to put yourself in that situation unless you absolutely needed to, or you were very confident that you were correct. And too often we're making these decisions emotionally because it's what I want, but we're bringing across a message of it's what has to happen, it's what needs to happen. And we're then projecting onto them our own desires. Rather than encouraging and empowering their desires and their autonomy, often we're squishing it. Now, when you're clear that your child brushing your teeth is a good thing to do, it's the right thing to do, and there's no alternative, well, then you be more directive about it. Stay responsive, of course. But in this case, what's interesting is you know that your motive is love. You know that you want the best for them, and you've been honest enough to challenge, is there another way? Is there a better way to look after your teeth than brushing them every night? Well, it's the best way that we know. There's probably another way, and I'm open to that. So I'm not fixed on what has to happen. I'm giving this guideline, but it's clear why I'm giving it. And sometimes we kid ourselves that we want the best for our child and therefore we're directive. But oftentimes I've seen with authoritarian parents that they can get the best of themselves. They'll let their emotions flood in. And I just put a caution, anytime you're being authoritarian, if you have an emotional driver, it's probably not the right thing to do. If you're being passive, if you're being laissez-faire and you're disconnecting from guidance and caring for your child, and it's driven in some way by an emotion, frustration, disappointment, it's probably not coming from the right place. We want to be disciplining our children in a non-emotive stance. We want to have logic, reason, and genuine care applied to the way that we discipline. It's very difficult to do. And the important point is which other side of this spectrum you would land, whether you're the more capitalistic, I guess you could say, like me, or the more socialistic, whether you're more authoritarian or you're more laissez-faire. Both will work. And although for a younger child, being more directive is definitely better, we do want to see ourselves transition ultimately towards a point where we're empowering and enabling and letting them make more decisions. And that's a slow process that takes time, and there's no very clear point of where you start, and there's no clear point where you end or when you get there. This is the joy of being a parent, is to walk this road and to gradually release responsibility and empowerment to our children. But the key thing that's left behind, more than the lessons learned, more than habits that our children have, is the message that we conveyed. Were we telling them that we love them? Were we telling them that we care? Were we telling them that they're worth it and that we're willing to go outside of what we want and we're comfortable with to give them what's really best for them? Were we loving and disciplining our children? Hopefully that's a useful thought for you. Love to hear your feedback, any reflections you have, any stories. Peace out.